Hello, this is Ball Racing with top 10 championship fights that ended early in 2017. Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel were having a titanic fight where Sebastian Vettel dominated the first half of the season until Sebastian Vettel began to lose his form through the power tracks at Spa and Monza. And then, of course, came Singapore, where he crashed into his teammate Kimi Raikkonen and took Max Verstappen out. And this was followed up by an engine power unit failure in Malaysia, which saw him start last and finish fourth in the race. And then he broke down early in Japan. And at Mexico, the Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton would wrap up the title early, he hit the back into his front end into Hamilton, and despite a good comeback up to fourth place, the championship ended 2 rounds early. Next up is 2015, Lewis Hamilton versus Nico Rosberg. Now, some may say that this was never a championship fight, but in my opinion it was. The defending world champion Lewis Hamilton was in the midst of a deep, intense teammate rivalry with childhood friend Nico Rosberg, who had vowed to fight back after so nearly beating Hamilton the previous year, with both Mercedes once again well and truly the cream of the crop. But this time, Rosberg had his moments where he struggled, such as in the first round in Australia. He complained Hamilton was driving too slowly in China, and this was compounded by his engine failure in Italy. And in the title deciding round in America, at Circuits of Americas, Rosberg went wide, Hamilton went through and won the championship, although Rosberg did win the last 3 rounds after Hamilton did the job. 1980 is next up with the championship fight between Alan Jones and Nelson Piquet. Alan Jones was an emerging talent for the new Williams team, who had Patrick Henk designing their car, whilst at Brabham they had the young Nelson Piquet, who had Gordon Murray designing their cars, and it was 2 emerging superstars battling out for the championship, whilst the 2 Renaults of René Arnoux and Jean-Pierre Jabri and the 2 Ligiers of Laffite and Pironi all won races. The consistency of Jones and Piquet meant that they were the 2 drivers in contention come the North American rounds in Canada. However, Piquet suffered an engine failure, which meant that at a restart he had to use a qualifying engine, and his car failed, meaning Jones won it a round early. Next up is 1978, where Mario Andretti and Ronnie Peterson fought for the championship thanks to Lotus's amazing 79 chassis, which was an improvement upon the first ever ground effects car in the 78 model. However, thanks to poor reliability, it did mean that Lotus did not come anywhere near close to making a whitewash, as many presumed they would do, as it took them until Belgium, the 6th round, for them to introduce the 79 chassis, meaning that Reutemann and Depailler had already won 3 out of the 5 races, and thanks to Ronnie Peterson's tragic accident at the Italian Grand Prix, it meant that the championship was concluded early. And then, of course, bad luck for Andretti and his new teammate Jarier meant that the last 2 wins went to Reutemann and Villeneuve, both driving for Ferrari. Next up is 1972, where young hotshot Emerson Fittipaldi took on veteran Jackie Stewart, who was at the time a double world champion. Fittipaldi took advantage of Colin Chapman's brilliant Lotus 72 design, whilst Jackie Stewart drove his trusty Tyrrell car. However, Jackie Stewart suffered bad luck in the start of the season, retiring from South Africa and Spain and finishing 4th in Monaco, and then he was struck down with an ulcer, meaning that he had to miss the Belgian Grand Prix. And in that time, Jackie Stewart's problems throughout the year made Fittipaldi picked up 5 wins and wrapped up the title 2 rounds early by the Italian Grand Prix. However, Stewart did recover his form to win the 2 North American rounds in Canada and America to set himself up for a rematch in 1973. Next up, it's 1977, where there was a big 4-way fight emerging between the battle-scarred Niki Lauda, Jody Scheckter, who was driving for the new Wolf team, Mario Andretti was driving for the rejuvenated Lotus team with their Ground Effect 78 model, and Ferrari's new signing Carlos Reutemann. As it was, it became a battle of consistency, and Scheckter and Andretti, especially Andretti, had shown far superior pace to Lauda and Reutemann. However, Lauda's consistency, whilst Scheckter and Andretti's bad retirement rate meant that the Austrian was able to pick up his second world title, and having wrapped up the world title with 2 rounds to go at the American race, Niki Lauda left Ferrari to make his early move to Brabham. Next up is 1979, where the 2 Ferraris of Jody Scheckter and Gilles Villeneuve went up against Jacques Laffite, in which the Frenchman won the first 2 races at Argentina and Brazil for the fledgling Ligier team of France, who were making use of their new ground effects car. However, unfortunately, the Frenchman would struggle very much after that, whilst the 2 Ferraris of Villeneuve and Scheckter would then go on to dominate the season. In the second half of the year, Adam Jones would then become the dominant force with his new Williams car. However, his lack of form in the first half meant he was ruled out of the championship. So come the Italian round at the Scuderia's home race in front of the Tifosi, Laffite retired from the race while Scheckter and Villeneuve finished 1-2, and Scheckter won the championship with 2 rounds to go. Next up, it's 2001, but Michael Schumacher had just won his 3rd world title after beating Mika Häkkinen. However, the Finn struggled at the start of 2001, having suffered a horrendous crash in Australia and having retired from the lead of the Spanish Grand Prix on the last lap with a clutch failure, leaving it to his Scottish teammate Coulthard to take the mantle of fighting for the championship to the German. Despite the fact Schumacher and Coulthard were tied on points after the San Marino Grand Prix, Coulthard would suffer problems with launch control and traction control, meaning that he stalled at the start at both at Spain and Monaco, meaning that his championship challenge after winning in Brazil and Austria, he would not win another race, and Schumacher was able to tie up the championship with 4 rounds to go in Hungary after further retirements in Britain and Germany for the Scotsman. 1985 was a championship fight between Alan Prost's McLaren tag Porsche and Mercedes Alboretto's Ferrari. The Frenchman and the Italian would both finish regularly on the podium in a season where many others, including Rosberg and Senna, were struggling with severe reliability problems, whilst Mansell and De Angelis and Alboretto's teammate Johansson were really off the pace and only scoring small points. By the time of the German Grand Prix, which Alboretto won, the Italian was leading Prost by 5 points, and however, after the Dutch Grand Prix, the Italian's challenge began to fall apart with severe reliability problems for the Scuderia, meaning that Prost was able to wrap up the championship by the European Grand Prix at Brands Hatch with 2 rounds to go. Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher are the final entry for this list, as the 1995 season had been shaped up to be a close fight between the Brit and the German. However, Damon Hill's silly collision with Schumacher in Britain, and then Damon Hill crashing out on the second lap of the German Grand Prix, left him 21 points behind. And even though we did regain some of the ground back in the next round at Hungary, where Schumacher struggled down in 11th due to a mechanical failure, whilst Hill won, cutting the gap back down to 11 points, Hill never really recovered his form, and he proceeded to crash into Schumacher again in Italy. And then, of course, He finished behind Schumacher in Belgium and again in Portugal when Coulthard took his first Grand Prix, and then he crashed out of the European Grand Prix when Schumacher had his brilliant drive, and then at Pacific, Hill messed up, and that was it.